Take us back to that moment you locked eyes, and just what about it was something that just didn't seem right?
This cold and angry look. I can't describe it into words.
I just spoke to a woman who says she saw Luciano Frattolin and his daughter Melina the night he allegedly took her life. This is video per WNYT of Luciano in custody. The dad is now in upstate New York in jail, accused of drowning his daughter and leaving her body in a shallow pond. And not only did we talk to someone who says that she and her husband saw Luciano in that area around the time police say he allegedly murdered Melina, we also have new images from police in their search for answers and new details that paint a picture of a man who loved to have champagne taste, but had a financial reality far less glamorous. We're on the case, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Chris Stewart. We have a lot to unpack in this interview we just did with a woman who says she saw Luciano Frattolin the night he allegedly killed his daughter. She says they passed by him on the side of the road around the time police say he allegedly killed Melina Frattolin in the area where the authorities would eventually find her body. Now, before I get to what she had to say, which I will do in just a moment, I want to show you these new pictures that were put out by New York State Police of the vehicle that Luciano and Melina Frattolin were riding in during their 10-day vacation. This is a part that I am really struggling with this week, that all of this happened on what was supposed to be the final day of their father-daughter trip to New York and Connecticut. The two of them were visiting from Montreal. Now, yesterday, New York State Police revealed the findings of an autopsy of young Melina. They say she died by drowning. Police say they found her body in a shallow pond in a wooded area of Ticonderoga, New York, a small town in upstate New York along the Vermont border. Her father was the one who called 911 the night prior. He allegedly made up a wild story that his daughter had been kidnapped, that he pulled over to the side of the road as they were making their way back to Canada when two men in a white van pulled up and abducted Melina and then drove off. Police put out an Amber Alert, but they said they found inconsistencies in Luciano's story. It's unclear how police were drawn to the area of Ticonderoga where they found Melina's body, but I just spoke to a woman named Becky Kulikowski who says she saw Frattolin's Prius on the side of the road in that area around 7 p.m. the night of Melina's murder. Here's our conversation. Becky, what did you see the other night?
We left high at like 7:34 p.m. and we headed up Chilton because we were going out to the Timberwolf for karaoke and dinner. And when we crested the top of Chilton, there's a road called Putnam Pond Road, and it was almost next to it, but just past it, with a car facing towards Ty. And the car I knew was a Toyota Prius. I knew it was. I knew it was a Toyota. So to be honest, I sat at the bar that we were eating at, and I looked up all the Toyota cars until I found one that looked like the car I saw. But we'll go back, because when I was driving by, the reason that it caught my eye was because I saw a man running up the bank. There's a small wooded area. So when you go past the Putnam Pond Road, there's like this little dip there. And then there's like a small wooded area. And a man was running up the hill, and he was sweaty, and we locked eyes, and he had on a dark blue shirt and jeans. And I really swore that the car was blue, but my husband, who was my passenger, said, no, the car was slate gray. And he also saw a little girl too. But I looked at him and I said, well, that was odd. And he's like, why is it odd? I'm like, well, there's a man that's got out of state plates. Why is he running up the hill from the woods? Like, that's weird. And he's like, maybe he was just taking a leak, like he's got a kid with him. Maybe they're on a vacation or something, And I'm like, okay, whatever. I overthink things all the time. So we just kept going. But it still wasn't sitting right with me. And when we got there, we waited about 15 more minutes and my son showed up. And I had talked to him too about it because it still wasn't sitting right with me. He said that he saw a strange car up by Eagle Lake area that was just parked there. But he described it as like a Subaru car. He's not very good with cars, but it's whatever, neither here nor there. Then it just kept sitting with me wrong. So like while we're eating dinner, I'm sitting there looking at cars online. um, until I found one. And I thought it was like a 2017 Toyota Prius or newer. And that is what I ended up reporting to the police. Um, when we got home, it was like around, I'd say 1 a.m. And we got that alert. And my stomach was like instantly in knots. I remember telling my husband that I thought maybe this was related. And he was like, you need to stop overthinking and whatever. So later that day, I had to go to my sister-in-law's and my brothers to finish cleaning out from when they had passed away. And my niece got a message that said something was going on at Eagle Lake. And I instantly said to her, Michelle, they're looking for that little girl that's missing. And she's like, I was thinking that too. And because I had already told her about what I'd seen the night before. And so later that day, I waited until like 4:30 when we got home and we unloaded stuff from there. I called the police. I got dispatched. They kind of were in a rush to get me off the phone, but I understand now why. I didn't know that they had found her yet. I didn't know any of that. So I understand why he was getting me off the phone kind of quick, but nobody called me back on by Monday. So I called them in the morning and I spoke to an officer and he took my name, my number, my email address, and my address. And he asked me a couple of times about the Prius and what it looked like and what the man was wearing. And so that's the last time I talked to them.
Did you see Melina as well, or the little girl? Or
I
was
did.
that your
I
husband who
didn't
saw the
see
little girl?
her. My husband saw her. So that's what I was getting at. When he got home from work, I asked him what she was wearing and what she looked like. And he said, well, she was definitely dark complected and she had brown hair, between 9 and 11 years old. He said he only seen the side of her because she was getting into the car and she had on a white, he assumes it was white because it was very light colored. And you got to remember it's getting kind of dark at this point. Not completely dark, but we're going up a hill with sun in our eyes. And he said shorts on. That's all he could tell me. He doesn't do social media, not like the rest of the world.
So she was getting, because I'm just picturing this, you're passing this Prius on the side of the road and you see who we believe is Luciano, and he was with the girl, and I know your husband saw her, but his daughter was potentially going with him into the woods.
She was getting in the car. He was running up the bank from the woods. And when we locked eyes, I'm never going to forget his face. Never. When I saw him walk out of that courthouse, someone sent me a video and I said, oh my God, that is freaking him. Like, that is him. I will never forget his face. It was like a fear, but like a cold, angry look is all I can describe it as. And the feeling that I got, I'll never forget it. Never. Like, and I I haven't slept yet and I am having trouble sleeping. I keep thinking, what if we stopped, because she'd still be alive probably if we stopped.
It's
I
hard
don't
to
know.
second guess those moments, and you did call the police, and you let them know what you had seen. So I think it's hard to, I think all of us would second guess in that situation, but you would never expect. I mean, I know Ticonderoga, where you live, is not a place where this stuff typically happens. The area that police were searching, and where unfortunately they found Melina's body, is that the area where you saw
That's
that
just up the
Prius?
road from where, just up the road.
Just
So
what's that area like?
it's wooded. We hike it a lot. I've hiked it since I was a teenager. It's beautiful. I hate to say that, but it's beautiful. So there's houses. Where I saw them. There's houses. Where they found her. Uh, I'm not sure exactly where they found her. I just know it was somewhere just past Eagle Lake. Um, there's no houses up there. It's just trails. It's just wilderness, beautiful wilderness.
And what time? And it was around, you were saying like 8 o'clock, between like 7 and 8, you might have seen
We left
that
high
you
at
saw
seven
this?
at 7:34 p.m. We left high. Like, we started up Chilton Hill at 7:34.
Wow. And, for you, that moment that you lock eyes with him, and it's because for us, like we've seen, he's this guy on social media that looks like he's, this all-American dad. And then you see the video of him now that he's in custody. I mean, take us back to that moment you locked eyes, and just what about it was something that just didn't seem right?
As soon as I looked at him, I don't know, it was a feeling that I got inside of me. As a mother, you get this this instinct when something's not right or someone isn't right. It was an odd moment for me when I saw his face. He looked like I guess scared, like maybe you got caught doing something you weren't supposed to do. I guess that's what I would describe that as, because my kids do it all the time to me. But also like this cold and angry look. I can't describe it into words. I don't think I'll ever be able to describe what I was feeling in that moment. And, and my husband's just like, you're overthinking, it's fine. They're probably just, in a hurry. Maybe they're on vacation. He was taking a leak. Yeah. But when he first said they, I'm like, what? They? I only saw him. And he was like, no, there's a little girl there. You didn't see her? I'm like, no. But then again, I was too focused on this man that was running up a hill out of the middle of the woods. Like, why are you over there? I mean, he could have been right. Maybe he was peeing. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, we'll never know. And it's nothing for you to kind of beat yourself up about either in this, and I think no one would have expected that that's what they would have seen on their way to karaoke one night.
Yeah, I definitely did think that.
I mean, when you think about what may have happened, because if she was getting into the car and then sadly, we know where the search ended in this case, it's something as if they were getting back into the vehicle and then who knows what have happened, after that.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And the vehicle was facing Ty. So they would have had to turn around and go back up the road to get there. Like, if I had to guess, maybe he was going to do it, but then realized there was too much traffic. I don't know. I saw somebody else comment on a news page that said that she had seen them the night before at the trailhead, the Faro Lake trailhead. And she said she swears it was them. And I'm like, why would you be there the day before and then go back again? It's odd.
And for you, where you live, it's an incredibly beautiful part of the country. Saratoga Springs, Lake George, Ticonderoga, where you are along the Vermont border. How has this story impacted your community this week?
I think everybody's feeling it in their feels. At the vigil last night, there was a lot of tears, a lot of hugging, a lot of sadness. And I understand not everybody can understand why people are upset over someone they didn't know, but everybody experiences empathy differently, I guess. I think that, as a community, we have seen over the last probably maybe 10 years, we've seen 2 other murders here. I think that we just come together. It doesn't matter who you are or if we knew you or not. It's just how we are.
And why was it important for you to be public? And I know you've spoken with other, media outlets to make sure people know what you saw. Why was it important to do this interview?
I was honestly going to back out of this one today. But my heart says that I should tell people that they should listen to their instincts. And when your gut is telling you something's wrong, something is probably wrong. Please listen to it, because you don't want to be me second guessing.
This is not something to beat yourself up about. You end up calling police and no one would have known that this is how this story was going to play out. And hopefully your information and what you're telling us and what you've told police can help them piece together and try to understand what happened. Becky Kulikowski of Ticonderoga, New York, thank you for taking the time to be with us.
Thank you for your time.
Obviously, you can see a lot of emotion there from Becky over what she saw and the second guessing that she's had after seeing Luciano Frattolin, she says, on the side of the road. Now, this is Luciano Frattolin now. This video is per WNYT. He has pleaded not guilty to the charge of murder. And of course, we have to say he's presumed innocent. But Per the New York Post, he said he could not afford a lawyer and that he was broke. Now, if you've seen his social media, that might be a surprise because this is a man, at least publicly, that appeared to be living the high life. He loved luxury cars, especially Porsches. This was him just 5 weeks ago. There's a video showing him walking through a garage full of Porsches. Now, he also gave the impression that he loved his daughter. This picture is him hugging her at her birthday party, and this was just 3 months ago. Now, it seems that he brought her on vacations around the world to spend time together, and looking at this makes you truly wonder how something like this could allegedly happen. But like in many cases, we are starting to understand that what social media looks like is not what reality looks like. New York State Police say the day after Luciano allegedly killed Melina, he was supposed to turn her over into the custody of his estranged wife. She is who Melina lived with full-time, police say. Now, police have not said what the motive was, but there's another tragic detail in all of this. Because just a couple of hours before she was allegedly murdered, Melina was on the phone with her mom as her dad was driving her back toward the Canadian border. Luciano was listed as a founder of a coffee company out of Canada, and on the company bio page, he called Melina the light of his life. He also reportedly wrote in his bio that in 2019, he went through an unfortunate event that severely impacted his well-being, according to Canadian news outlet City News. Now, it's unclear what he meant by that, but it's important to note 2019 is the same year he became estranged from his wife. At the time of this recording, the coffee company's website and social media are no longer active online. And speaking of his businesses, it appears that Luciano was in some pretty difficult financial circumstances. La Presse is a French-Canadian newspaper, and it's reporting that Frattolin was being sued by a bank for roughly $110,000 American related to unpaid credit card debt. The paper also says that Frattolin operated a bed and breakfast in this building in Montreal, and he used that money by renting it out to pay for his daughter's child support. Now, he reportedly has since sold that property, and he's in tens of thousands of dollars in debt, including $26,000 in rent and $33,000 on the company credit card, according to La Presse. Frattolin reportedly sued his bed and breakfast business partner this year, accusing him of cutting him out of the business and using the company credit card for his own gain. Now, for as much as the personal and professional hardships are painting a picture of a man whose life was falling apart, that still does not explain why he would allegedly kill the girl who, it appeared, he had adored so much. Here, once again, are the pictures of the Prius that Luciano and Melina were in before her alleged murder. Police say the last places they were seen, Saratoga Springs at a restaurant on surveillance camera video at 5:30 p.m. That is just hours before Melina lost her life. Joining us now to talk more about this is retired NYPD detective and co-host of Gold Shield's podcast, Tom Smith. It's always great to have you on Law and Crime. This story, I've struggled with it this week because it's just so awful to see what this man is accused of doing to his own daughter. Let's start with the Amber Alert that the attempted abduction that he talked to authorities about. He calls 911 and he says he pulls over to the side of the road and a white van pulls up as he's going to the bathroom, yanks his daughter out, and they head in the opposite direction. New York State Police did put out an Amber Alert, so they investigated it, but they said that was not something that happened. What would stand out to you if you were one of the investigators responding to that call?
Yeah, I understand the Amber Alert because you have to go on what is being told of you, because you don't want to not do it because that ramification is worse. So I understand them putting the Amber Alert out, but you are going to not stop that investigation with just an Amber Alert. I would be very curious of his attitude, his actions, his emotions, and the details of what, took place. The white van, how many times have we heard that? Just randomly come up to you and grab your kid is not a norm. It doesn't happen. So you're going to just keep going down that line of looking at this individual and his story of where they were going, what's going on. And this is just as troubling as they get, Chris. This is heartbreaking and something that detectives have to deal with. And you put your emotions in check and you just keep doing the case.
Yeah. And so the story he told was they were on their way back to Quebec. He pulls over to the side of the road to go to the bathroom as they're heading northbound, and a white van pulls up, two men inside, yanks his 9-year-old daughter out, Melina, and it heads southbound. And like one question I would have had was just, how would that van have known that you had a 9-year-old girl in your car at night? So the 911 calls made at 10 o'clock. So it just seemed like, easy to say in hindsight, it was just something that didn't add up from the very beginning. Now you start going into his financial documents, and he was involved in lawsuits, he was in debt, things seemed to be crumbling around him on top of a estranged custody issue that he had. What do you make of some of the information we're learning about him now that all of this is coming to light?
Yeah, you know what? It's just all troubling because you can have all the craziness going on in your life you want. You know, a divorce, financial problems, or whatever. It just doesn't justify or make any sense to kill your child. I mean, you know, what's the end game in that? It's just horrible. But you know, going back to the crime scene, Chris, just for a moment.
Yeah.
I mean, what's the first thing I'm doing? I'm getting in my car and chasing the van. And while I'm chasing the van, I'll call 911. You know, I'm not going to sit there and wait for the police to show up. You know, while I know the direction the van's going, he gave a description of the van. So what are you doing? I'm jumping in my car and chasing the van, you know, which didn't happen, which would have been my first indication of something not right with this story. But as, you know, you go on, it falls apart, and it fell apart quick, you know, which tends to happen in these. And it's just, again, a heartbreaking story.
It really is. And it's just, and to your point on heading south as well, if you're heading northbound, you were just on the road you were going. In upstate New York, I mean, the highways are pretty up and down. There's not a lot of, you know, twists and turns that you would make if you were trying to pursue that vehicle that had your daughter in it. Another really just brutal part of this story for me is that the girl calls. So they spend 10 days together in New York and Connecticut doing a father-daughter vacation. And then she calls her mom around 6:30 and she says, "Hey, we're on our way home." And it's like the dad knew, you would have to think at that point, of what he was allegedly going to do. You've dealt with a lot of bad people in your career, but you just look at this story. What are just some of the most chill, beyond what he's accused of doing, but it's just the lead up to it I'm really struggling with because it's just so chilling.
Yeah, I mean, you try to get into the head of the thought process of what he wants to do and how he's going to end this young girl's life. And it's something you can't wrap your head around, especially being a father. You can't wrap your head around doing that to your child. And then what you're going to do with her body afterwards and how you're going to cover it up. And the story, you know, like you just said, this wasn't all of a sudden, this is what I'm doing. This was planned. This was thought out. This was thought about for, you know, either an hour, a day, or whatever it might have been. But that's the just evilness of this. To do this to your own child is something we can't comprehend, and we never will, because it's so evil and heartbreaking. But, you know, hopefully the evidence is there, the case is strong, and he gets what he deserves.
He's charged with second-degree murder, and to your point, it feels like there was a lead up here. You know, it's not something that he just thought of. You have, you know, a time he was going to return the child to her mom, which is, I don't know if it was a custody agreement, but she lived full time, according to police, with her mom. Why is this not first-degree murder?
Well, first-degree murder is usually, you know, for police officers or public officials. The second-degree murder is the premeditation, and that it was planned, and hiding her body and everything that went into even after her death. You know, all is encompassing in the second-degree murder charge. So that's the right charge for sure in New York.
And then how do you see this? You know how the New York court system works. He's Canadian. Is there any chance he would go back to Canada?
No, they're going to hold him here. I don't think there's not going to be anything that they're involved in because the crime was committed here. You know, they may have something to say about it because he's a Canadian citizen, but I don't see that going in any direction for him because he's not getting out. He's not getting out on bail. You know, he's going to be held. So, you know, him leaving or anything like that is not going to really, I think, be in play here.
We don't officially have a motive, but as this case goes forward, I mean, do you even really need one if you have the evidence of what he did? And clearly enough, I just, at this point, what does motive really matter?
No, I was just going to say that it doesn't matter. The motive of killing her doesn't matter. You did it, or he's allegedly did it. But all the background of it, of the whys, and he was involved in, his financial problems or, custody battles, none of that matters. What matters is his actions and what ended this young girl's life.
And then going back to, and we've talked about this before, these, I just find it fascinating when you have people who are accused in these crimes and they thought they were going to get away with it. And in this case, it's the Amber Alert and this sensational story. And to your point, even something as simple as, why didn't you get in the car and chase her? Or how would people have known that you had a 9-year-old girl in the middle of the night in the back of your car? What are the mistakes that you see suspects make in cases like this that they're just not thinking about in the heat of the moment?
Yeah, well, they make it too grand. They make it too, elaborate of a crime. And that always leads investigators into looking at it kind of, with a certain slant. When it's so grand of a plan of pulling up, like you said, who's following them, who's knowing there's a 9-year-old girl in the back, anything like that. A lot of these crimes don't typically happen, the way they're described. So that's always part of it. But the other part of it for me, being in front of someone and how are they acting? That is a big, big part of my role as a detective. And it was when I worked. What's the person acting like? How charged up are they? How emotional are they that their child just got grabbed in front of them? I mean, think about that. Think about being in that situation. If that actually occurred, what you would be feeling and acting like. So that's a big part and always was for me. What is the person acting like in their emotional state?
Yeah, it's just, this story is just so difficult. Know he's due in court again later this week, accused of just a horrific crime. Tom Smith, retired NYPD detective, co-host of the Gold Shields podcast. Thank you for being with us on Law and Crime as always.
Always a pleasure, Chris. Thank you for having me.
That will do it for On the Case, presented by Law and Crime. Subscribe to us on YouTube and Spotify. I'm Chris Stewart. We'll see you next time.